All right, now that we've talked a little bit about how to use sig figs in mathematical operations, maybe we should go back and talk about counting sig figs. Now, significant figures or significant digits are just a way for us to be able to look. They say how good or how poor a measurement is. I don't really like that terminology. But if you have two measurements in the same units and one of them has more digits than the other, generally the one with more digits we consider to be more accurate. There's some caution you have to use in saying that. But let's go over some of the rules for counting those sig figs. So counting sig figs, any non-zero numbers are significant. So 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 9, always significant. Let me do an example. So let's say I have the number, 8,432. These are all non-zero numbers, so we would count all of them whenever we were looking at sig figs. So that number has 4 sig figs. Now, next we have zeros, and zeros are just a pain. What can I say? The first type of zero we have are captive zeros. Now, captive zeros mean that they are between two non-zero numbers. So, for instance, 107. That zero is surrounded by a 1 and a 7. Captive zeros are always significant. So, this number has 3 sig figs. Now, the next type of zero is called a leading zero. A leading zero means it comes before your first non-zero number. So these are usually going to be like you have a decimal and there's a whole bunch of zeros at the beginning. These are never significant. So leading zeros, never significant. For instance, 0.0042. These are leading zeros, not significant. In this particular number, we have 2 sig figs, the 4 and the 2. Finally, we have trailing zeros. And trailing zeros are also a pain. Now, trailing zeros, sometimes they'll say that it can't be determined because we don't know if those trailing zeros, the ones at the end, are supposed to be there or not. So depending on the text or the source, sometimes they'll say can't determine, and other times they want you to go ahead and make a general rule of thumb here. So our general statement is going to be these are only significant if there's a decimal in the number. So let's do a few examples. So if I was to do the number 15.00, because there's a decimal in that number, and then I wrote zeros after that, it would seem like those zeros are supposed to be there. So those zeros are considered to be significant. In this case, we have 4 sig figs. On the other hand, if I said 1500, I don't know if that's a rounded off number or if it's an exact number. So generally, we're going to assume, I know it's bad to assume, I know what it does to you and me, but this is what we have to do. We're going to assume that it's not significant, that this is a rounded off number. So we're going to say that that one has 2 sig figs. All right, let's try one more. All right, 12.0470. Okay, the 1, the 2, the 4, the 0, we know those are significant because they're non-zeros. The first zero is a captive zero, so yes, it is significant. The last zero is a trailing zero. There is a decimal in this number, so yes, it is significant. So this number has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sig figs. Okay, one more. 0.040. Try this one. We have leading zeros, not significant. 4, non-zero, always significant. And then we have this trailing zero. Decimal in the number, yes, it's significant. This one has 2. Let's try a few more examples. This slide has some examples, so I want you to pause it, try these examples, and then we'll go over the answers. Okay, you did pause it and try, right? All right, your answers on this one. This first one, 4,536. All of those numbers are non-zero. They're all considered to be significant. That has 4 sig figs. The next one, 4.506. That's captive. Captive is always significant. It has 4 sig figs. 4,500. We have 2 trailing zeros, no decimal. I don't know for sure if they're significant or not, so I will assume they are not. That has 2 sig figs. 0.0045. These are leading zeros. Leading are never significant. This one has 2 sig figs. 450.00. These are all trailing zeros. There is a decimal in the number, so they are all significant. This has 5 sig figs. And finally, 0.00450. We have leading zeros, never significant. 4 and 5 are because, they're not zero. And then finally, we have a trailing zero. The trailing zero does have a decimal in the number, so it is significant. This has 3 sig figs. So hopefully that gives you a better understanding on how to count them. And I will see you in the next video.